Have you ever noticed something strange about life? The very things you fear the most often seem to find their way into your experience. The relationship you desperately try to protect begins to slip away. The money you constantly worry about somehow becomes even harder to hold on to. The opportunity you pray for never seems to arrive. And after a while, you start wondering, why? Why does life sometimes feel as though it is working against you? Why do some people seem to effortlessly attract abundance, love, opportunities, and success, while others spend years struggling just to survive? Most people spend their entire lives searching for answers in the outside world. They search for better jobs, better relationships, better circumstances, better luck. But what if the real answer has been hidden inside you all along? What if the invisible force shaping your future is not the economy, your past, your family, or even your current circumstances? What if the most powerful creative force in your life is something you use every single day without fully understanding it? Your subconscious mind. For centuries, spiritual teachers, mystics, philosophers, and modern scientists have pointed toward the same profound truth. The outer world is often a reflection of the inner world. The life you experience is deeply influenced by the thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and mental images that live beneath conscious awareness. Most people hear this idea and immediately dismiss it. It sounds too simple, too mystical, too unbelievable. But stay with me, because what you are about to discover may completely change the way you see yourself, your reality, and your future. Tonight, we are going on a journey into the hidden depths of a human mind, not the conscious mind that analyzes, judges, and worries, but the deeper mind, the silent mind, the creative mind, the mind that never sleeps, the mind that listens to every thought you repeat, the mind that accepts every image you emotionally impress upon it, the mind that quietly shapes the experiences, opportunities, and circumstances that appear in your life. Most people unknowingly spend their days programming this powerful inner system with fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of losing money, fear of being alone, fear of not being enough. And then they wonder why life keeps delivering experiences that mirror those fears. Imagine planting seeds in a garden. Every thought you think is a seed. Every emotion you repeatedly feel is water. Every mental image you replay is sunlight. Now imagine planting seeds of fear every day for years. What kind of garden would grow? Would you expect roses, or would you expect weeds? The subconscious mind does not argue. It does not judge. It does not decide whether a thought is good or bad. It simply accepts what is repeatedly impressed upon it and begins expressing it through your actions, perceptions, decisions, and ultimately your reality. This is why two people can face the exact same circumstance and create completely different outcomes. One sees opportunity. The other sees danger. One expects success. The other expects failure. One moves forward with confidence. The other hesitates with doubt. The external situation may be identical, but their internal programming is different, and that difference changes everything. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who always seems lucky? Opportunities appear at the perfect time. Helpful people show up unexpectedly. Solutions emerge when they need them most. From the outside, it looks like magic, but often what you're witnessing is the natural result of an inner state, a subconscious expectation that life is working in their favor. Now consider the opposite. Have you ever known someone who constantly expects problems? Every opportunity looks suspicious. Every challenge feels overwhelming. Every setback becomes proof that life is unfair. And somehow, their fears keep appearing over and over again. Different circumstances, same pattern, different faces, same story. What creates that pattern? The subconscious mind, the hidden operating system beneath everyday awareness. The fascinating thing is that most people try to change their lives by changing external conditions. They try to force outcomes. They try to control circumstances. They fight reality. They push harder, work harder, stress harder, worry harder, yet little changes, because they are trying to change a reflection without changing the source. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. If you don't like the reflection, would you try to polish the mirror? Would you argue with it? Would you demand that it change? Of course not. You would change yourself, and the reflection would automatically follow. This is one of the greatest spiritual principles ever discovered. The outer world follows the inner world, change the inner image, and the outer experience begins to transform, not overnight, not through magic, but through the powerful and often invisible processes of the subconscious mind. As we continue this journey together, you will begin to understand why fear is so powerful, why doubt can sabotage even the best intentions, why effort alone often fails, and why imagination may be one of the most misunderstood forces in human existence. More importantly, you will discover how to consciously plant new seeds, seeds of abundance, seeds of confidence, seeds of peace, seeds of purpose. Because the truth is this: you are constantly creating, whether you realize it or not. The question is not whether your subconscious mind is working. The question is, what have you been teaching it to create? Take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and allow yourself to become fully present. Because what you are about to learn could change the direction of your life forever. There is a question that has haunted humanity for centuries. Why do our greatest fears often become our greatest experiences? At first glance, it seems unfair. A person spends years worrying about losing money, and suddenly financial hardship arrives. Someone fears abandonment, and eventually finds himself alone. Another constantly worries about failure, and somehow keeps encountering situations that confirm their worst expectations. Most people believe these events are random, coincidences, bad luck, misfortune. But what if there is something deeper happening beneath the surface? What if fear is not merely an emotion? What if fear is a form of creation? Think carefully about this. When you fear something intensely, where does your attention go? Directly toward the thing you do not want. You imagine it. You rehearse it. You visualize it. You emotionally experience it long before it happens. Your body reacts as if the event is already real. Your heart beats faster. Your stomach tightens. Your muscles tense. Your nervous system prepares for a danger that may not even exist. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a physical experience. To the deeper mind, repetition equals reality. And fear is one of the most powerful forms of repetition. Imagine carrying a flashlight in a dark forest. Wherever you point the light becomes illuminated. Your attention works the same way. Whatever you repeatedly focus on becomes energized, not because the universe is punishing you, not because life is cruel, but because attention is creative energy. Every day, millions of people unknowingly use this power against themselves. They wake up thinking about bills. They drive to work imagining disasters. They replay old failures. They expect disappointment. They prepare for rejection. And then they wonder why life feels heavy, why opportunities seem scarce, why abundance feels distant. The subconscious mind simply follows instructions. It is always listening, always recording, always learning. It does not stop to ask whether your thoughts are helping you or hurting you. It simply accepts what is repeated most often. This is why the dominant thought is so important. Not the occasional positive affirmation, not the motivational quote you read in the morning, not the vision board hanging on your wall. The dominant thought, the emotional pattern you return to again and again throughout the day. That is the message your subconscious receives. And that is the blueprint it begins to follow. Many people spend 5 minutes visualizing success and 10 hours visualizing failure. Then they wonder why nothing changes. The subconscious responds to consistency. It responds to emotional intensity. It responds to repetition. Fear provides all three, which is why fear can become such a powerful creator. But here is the good news. The same mechanism that allows fear to create unwanted experiences can also be used intentionally to create extraordinary ones. The subconscious mind is not your enemy. It is your servant. It has been serving your deepest beliefs your entire life. The moment you understand this, everything begins to change. Because now the question becomes, if fear can shape reality, what could faith create? If anxiety can influence your future, what could confidence influence? If worry can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, what could happen if you learn to expect something beautiful instead? This is where true transformation begins. Not in the outer world, not in your bank account, not in your relationships, but in the invisible landscape of your mind. Every lasting change starts there. Every breakthrough starts there. Every new reality starts there. The moment you stop feeding fear, you begin feeding possibility. And possibility has the power to change everything. To understand your present life, you must first understand something most people never see. You were programmed long before you became aware of it, long before you chose your beliefs, long before you developed your opinions, long before you decided who you were. A program was already running. Think about a newborn child. A baby arrives in this world without fear of money, without fear of failure, without limiting beliefs, without ideas about success, without ideas about worthiness. A child doesn't know what is possible or impossible. They simply absorb, they observe, they imitate, they learn. And that is exactly what makes the subconscious mind so powerful during childhood. From birth until roughly the age of 7, the human brain operates primarily in slower brainwave states, states that are incredibly receptive to information. In a sense, the child is living in hypnosis. Everything they see, everything they hear, everything they experience is being recorded, not analyzed, not questioned, recorded. Imagine a camera that never turns off. Every conversation between your parents, every emotional reaction, every argument, every expression of love, every expression of fear, every statement about money, every statement about success, every statement about relationships. It is all being stored deep within the subconscious mind. And here's what makes this so important. The subconscious doesn't learn from what people say. It learns from what people repeatedly demonstrate. A parent may tell a child, "You could be anything you want." But if that same parent spends every day complaining about life, struggling with money, criticizing successful people, and expecting disappointment, the child absorbs the behavior, not the words, because actions carry emotional weight. And emotion is the language of the subconscious. Imagine growing up hearing phrases like, "Money doesn't grow on trees," "Life is hard," "Rich people are greedy," "You have to suffer to succeed," "Don't dream too big," "People like us never get ahead." These statements may seem harmless, but repeated thousands of times, they become subconscious instructions, invisible commands, programs. And those programs eventually become reality, not because they are true, but because they are believed. The subconscious mind does not care whether belief is empowering or limiting. It only cares whether belief is familiar. Familiarity feels safe. And the subconscious is designed to keep you safe. Not successful, not wealthy, not fulfilled. Safe. This is why people often remain trapped in patterns they desperately want to escape. They aren't fighting reality. They are fighting familiarity. A person may consciously want abundance, but subconsciously believe that wealth creates problems. A person may consciously want love, but subconsciously associate love with pain. A person may consciously desire success, but subconsciously fear judgment. And every time they get close to achieving what they want, the subconscious pulls them back toward what feels familiar, toward what feels safe, toward what feels known. This creates one of the greatest frustrations in life. You want one thing consciously, but your subconscious is working towards something completely different. It's like trying to drive a car with one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake. No matter how hard you try, you don't move very far. This is why knowledge alone rarely changes lives. Most people know what they should do. They know they should think positively. They know they should take action. They know they should believe in themselves. Yet they continue repeating the same patterns. Because information changes the conscious mind. Repetition changes the subconscious mind. The subconscious learns through emotional experiences, through repetition, through imagination, through symbols, through stories. This is why childhood experiences can continue influencing a person decades later. A single emotional event can create a belief that lasts for years. Imagine a child who is embarrassed while speaking in front of a classroom. The event lasts only a few minutes, but the emotional impact becomes a subconscious program. Without realizing it, that child may grow into an adult who avoids leadership, avoids public speaking, avoids visibility, avoids opportunities, not because they lack ability, but because a hidden program is running beneath awareness. The same thing happens with money, relationships, health, confidence, success, worthiness. Entire lives can be built around beliefs that were never consciously chosen. And perhaps the most important realization of all is this: the program is not who you are. Read that again. The program is not who you are. The fears are not who you are. The doubts are not who you are. The limitations are not who you are. They are learned patterns. And anything that has been learned can be unlearned. Anything that has been programmed can be reprogrammed. This is where spiritual awakening truly begins. Not when you discover some secret hidden outside yourself, but when you realize that many of the thoughts you call me are simply old recordings, old stories, old conditioning, old programs. And the moment you become aware of them, you begin reclaiming your power, because awareness creates choice, and choice creates freedom. For perhaps the first time in your life, you can step back and ask, is this belief actually true, or is it merely familiar? Is this fear protecting me, or is it imprisoning me? Is this limitation a fact, or is it simply an old story I have repeated for so long that I mistook it for reality? The answers to those questions have the power to change everything. Because once you recognize the program, you no longer have to obey it. And that is where your transformation truly begins. Imagine for a moment that your life is a vast ship crossing an endless ocean. The waters stretch beyond the horizon. The weather changes. Storms come and go. The destination is not always visible. And yet, despite all the uncertainty, the ship continues moving. The question is, who is steering it? Most people believe they are fully conscious creators of their lives. They believe every decision is rational, every action intentional, every result carefully chosen. But if that were true, why do so many people repeatedly create the same unwanted experiences? Why do they find themselves in the same kinds of relationships, the same financial struggles, the same emotional battles, the same self-sabotaging patterns? The answer lies in understanding the relationship between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Imagine the conscious mind as the captain of a great ship. The captain stands high above the deck. He sees the horizon. He chooses a destination. He gives instructions. He makes decisions. But there is something important to understand. The captain does not move the ship. Deep below the deck is an enormous crew, thousands of workers, engineers, mechanics, operators. They never see the ocean. They never see the destination. They never question the orders. They simply execute them. This crew represents the subconscious mind. And just like the crew beneath the ship, your subconscious follows instructions without argument, without judgment, without resistance. Whatever instructions it receives repeatedly, it accepts as truth. Now imagine that the captain begins shouting the wrong commands. Watch out for failure. Expect disappointment. Nothing ever works out. I'm not good enough. People can't be trusted. I'll probably lose everything. The crew hears these commands, and because their job is obedience, they begin adjusting the engines accordingly. The ship changes direction, not because the crew is trying to sabotage the captain, but because the crew trusts the captain completely. This is exactly how the subconscious mind works. Every thought you repeatedly think becomes an instruction. Every belief becomes a command. Every emotional pattern becomes a navigation system. Most people never realize they are issuing commands all day long. They believe thoughts are harmless, temporary, meaningless, but thoughts repeated with emotion become orders, and the subconscious takes them seriously. Imagine waking up every morning and saying, "I'm exhausted. I can't handle this. Life is unfair. Nothing ever changes." At first, these words seem insignificant, but repetition gives them power. Eventually, the subconscious accepts them as reality. And once accepted, it begins organizing your behavior around them. You notice fewer opportunities. You take fewer risks. You avoid new experiences. You unconsciously confirm the belief. The ship continues moving exactly where the captain instructed. The fascinating part is that most of these commands are not deliberate. They are automatic, inherited, conditioned, passed down from family, culture, education, and past experiences. Many people are sailing toward destinations they never consciously chose. Think about that. Some people spend decades traveling toward failure while consciously praying for success, toward scarcity while consciously desiring abundance, toward loneliness while consciously seeking connection. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack talent, but because their subconscious crew is following old instructions, instructions given years ago, instructions they forgot they ever issued. This realization changes everything. Because once you understand the relationship between the captain and the crew, you stop trying to fight external circumstances. You stop blaming the ocean. You stop blaming the weather. You stop blaming other ships. Instead, you begin examining the commands being given from the bridge. You begin paying attention to your inner dialogue. You begin observing the thoughts that constantly repeat themselves. You begin noticing which beliefs are directing your life. And this is where true mastery begins, not by controlling every circumstance, but by learning to consciously direct your own mind. The greatest leaders in history understood this principle. The greatest spiritual teachers understood it. The most successful creators understood it. They realized that before you can lead your life, you must learn to lead your mind, because wherever the captain consistently points the ship, the crew will eventually take it. And here's the beautiful part. The subconscious crew doesn't care whether the destination is poverty or abundance, fear or freedom, limitation or possibility. It doesn't resist either one. It simply obeys, which means that starting today, you have a choice. You can continue repeating old commands, or you can begin issuing new ones. You can continue navigating by fear, or you can navigate by vision. You can continue focusing on what you want to avoid, or you can focus on what you truly want to create. Because every destination begins with a direction, and every direction begins with a thought. The ship of your life is moving right now. The engines are running. The crew is listening. The only question is, what instructions are you giving? There is one mistake that keeps millions of people trapped in cycles they desperately want to escape. A mistake so common that most people never even realize they are making it. They believe that a few positive thoughts can overpower thousands of negative ones. They believe that repeating an affirmation for 5 minutes in the morning is enough to transform their lives. They believe that writing goals in a journal once a week will somehow override years of subconscious conditioning. And then they become frustrated. They wonder why manifestation doesn't work, why visualization doesn't work, why affirmations don't work. But the truth is, the problem isn't that these methods don't work. The problem is that most people misunderstand how the subconscious mind actually operates. Remember this principle. The subconscious mind responds to the dominant thought, not the occasional thought, not the wishful thought, not the hopeful thought, the dominant thought, the thought that carries the greatest emotional weight, the thought that is repeated most consistently, the thought that occupies the largest amount of mental space. Imagine planting a single rose seed in a field, then spending the next 6 months covering that field with weeds. Would you be surprised when the weeds grow? Of course not. Yet this is exactly what most people do mentally. They wake up and say, I am abundant, then spend the rest of the day worrying about money. They say, I am confident, then spend the entire afternoon doubting themselves. They say, I trust life, then spend hours imagining worst-case scenarios. At night, they wonder why nothing changes. The subconscious isn't confused. It simply follows the strongest signal. Think of it like tuning into a radio station. The signal that comes through most clearly is the one you hear. The subconscious works the same way. It tunes itself to your most consistent mental frequency, not what you occasionally desire, but what you repeatedly believe. This is why fear often appears more powerful than desire. Fear is usually repeated more often. People may visualize success for 10 minutes, but they rehearse failure for 10 hours. They may imagine abundance briefly, but they emotionally relive scarcity all day long. Which message do you think the subconscious accepts? The stronger one, the repeated one, the dominant one. This realization changed everything for me, and it may change everything for you, because it reveals a hidden truth. Your life is not being shaped by what you say you want. Your life is being shaped by what you consistently expect. Read that again. Your reality is not responding primarily to your wishes. It is responding to your expectations. Many people say they want wealth, but expect struggle. They say they want love, but expect rejection. They say they want success, but expect disappointment. And expectation quietly wins, because expectation is belief in motion. Expectation carries emotional conviction. Expectation tells the subconscious, "This is what I believe will happen." And the subconscious immediately begins aligning behavior, perception, and decision-making around that belief. This explains something that often seems mysterious. Why two people with equal talent achieve completely different outcomes? One expects opportunities. The other expects obstacles. One expects growth. The other expects setbacks. One expects support. The other expects criticism. Over time, their expectations shape the choices they make, and those choices shape their lives. The world they experience begins reflecting the reality they internally anticipate, not perfectly, not instantly, but consistently. The dominant thought becomes a dominant experience. Now here's where things become even more interesting. Most dominant thoughts are not conscious. They're automatic, running quietly in the background, like software, like programming, like a song playing so softly you've forgotten it's there. You may consciously desire abundance, but subconsciously repeat, "I'm behind. I'm struggling. I never have enough." You may consciously desire love, but subconsciously repeat, "People always leave. I'll get hurt. I'm not enough." And because these thoughts are familiar, they often go unnoticed, yet they continue influencing your life every day. The subconscious listens to repetition, not intention alone. This is why awareness is so important. Before you can change a thought pattern, you must first notice it. You must become the observer, the witness, the conscious captain watching the commands being sent to the crew. Throughout the day, begin paying attention. What do you repeatedly tell yourself? What story do you keep rehearsing? What outcome do you secretly expect? Because hidden within those questions is the blueprint of your future. If your dominant thought is fear, fear becomes your compass. If your dominant thought is limitation, limitation becomes your reality. If your dominant thought is possibility, possibility begins opening doors. If your dominant thought is gratitude, life begins revealing more reasons to be grateful. The subconscious cannot move in two directions at once. It follows the strongest signal, the dominant signal, the signal you reinforce daily. And this brings us to one of the most empowering truths you will ever hear. You do not need to fight every negative thought. You simply need to create a stronger positive pattern. The goal is not perfection. The goal is direction. A ship may drift occasionally, but if the captain consistently corrects the course, it reaches its destination. The same is true for your mind. Every time you redirect your attention toward possibility, every time you choose faith over fear, every time you replace limitation with expansion, you strengthen a new mental pathway, a new signal, a new dominant pattern, and eventually the subconscious accepts it, not because you forced it, but because you repeated it, because you lived it, because you embodied it. And once that happens, reality begins to respond in ways that seem almost miraculous, not because the universe changed, but because you did. And when you change internally, the world you experience begins to change with you. Have you ever wondered why so many people spend years practicing manifestation techniques and still feel stuck? They create vision boards. They repeat affirmations. They write goals in journals. They watch motivational videos. They meditate. They visualize. And yet, months pass, years pass, and their lives remain largely unchanged. Eventually, frustration appears. Doubt begins to grow, and they conclude that manifestation simply doesn't work. But what if manifestation isn't failing? What if something else is happening? Imagine placing a seed into fertile soil. Every day you water it. Every day you give it sunlight. Every day you care for it. But every night, before going to sleep, you dig the seed back up. You check if it has grown. You become impatient. You become anxious. You wonder whether it's working. Then you bury it again. The next day, you repeat the process. Would the seed ever grow? Of course not. Not because seeds don't work, not because nature doesn't work, but because your behavior keeps interrupting the process. This is exactly what most people do with manifestation. They plant a vision, then immediately begin digging up a fear. They imagine abundance, then worry about money. They imagine love, then obsess over rejection. They imagine success, then replay failure. The subconscious receives mixed signals, and confusion creates stagnation. But there is an even deeper reason. Most people try to change circumstances without changing identity. And identity is everything. Think about it. A person who believes they are wealthy behaves differently than someone who believes they are poor. A person who believes they are worthy of love behaves differently than someone who believes they are unlovable. A person who believes they are capable behaves differently than someone who believes they are inadequate. Identity influences perception. Identity influences decisions. Identity influences actions, and actions create outcomes. This is why surface-level techniques often fail. Because beneath the affirmations, beneath the vision boards, beneath the positive thinking, the old identity remains untouched. Someone repeats, "I am abundant," but deep inside they still feel scarcity. Someone repeats, "I am confident," but deep inside they still feel unworthy. Someone repeats, "I am successful," but deep inside they still identify as a failure. The subconscious always follows identity, not words, identity. And here's the truth most people never hear. You cannot consistently create a life that is greater than the image you hold of yourself. You may temporarily achieve more. You may temporarily experience success. But if your identity remains unchanged, you will unconsciously return to familiar territory. This explains why lottery winners often lose everything. Why successful entrepreneurs sometimes sabotage themselves. Why people repeatedly recreate the same toxic relationships. The outer circumstances changed. The inner identity did not. And eventually the subconscious restored what felt familiar. The greatest transformation occurs when identity changes. Not behavior alone. Not goals alone. Identity. The moment you stop trying to get abundance and start becoming abundant internally, everything changes. The moment you stop trying to find love and start becoming love internally, everything changes. The moment you stop trying to become successful and begin identifying as someone capable of success, everything changes. This is where manifestation becomes effortless, because you are no longer forcing reality. You are expressing who you have become, and reality naturally reflects that expression. The universe mirrors identity. Life mirrors identity. Relationships mirror identity. Opportunities mirror identity. Your subconscious mirrors identity, which means the real question is not, what do I want? The deeper question is, who must I become to naturally experience what I desire? That question has the power to transform your entire life, because the moment identity changes, reality begins to follow. There's an invisible prison that holds more people captive than poverty, more people captive than fear, more people captive than circumstances. Most people live inside this prison their entire lives without ever realizing it exists. Its walls cannot be seen. Its bars cannot be touched. And yet its influence shapes nearly every decision a person makes. This prison is called identity. Not who you truly are, but who you believe you are. There's a profound difference. Most people spend their lives confusing the two. They mistake their history for their identity. They mistake their failures for their identity. They mistake their wounds for their identity. They mistake their fears for their identity. And then they spend years defending a version of themselves that was never real to begin with. Think about how often people introduce themselves through limitations. I'm shy. I'm bad with money. I'm unlucky. I'm not attractive. I'm not creative. I'm just not one of those successful people. At first glance, these statements seem harmless, but the subconscious mind hears something entirely different. It hears instructions. It hears definitions. It hears boundaries. Every time you say, I am, you are making a declaration of identity. And identity is one of the most powerful forces in the human experience. Because once the subconscious accepts an identity, it works tirelessly to prove it true. Imagine someone who secretly believes they are unworthy of success. They may consciously desire abundance. They may work hard. They may set goals. But deep inside, a hidden belief remains. I don't deserve it. The subconscious hears this and begins creating behaviors that align with it. They procrastinate. They hesitate. They doubt themselves. They miss opportunities. They settle for less than they deserve. Not because they want to fail, but because the subconscious is trying to remain loyal to the identity it has accepted. The same thing happens in relationships. A person may desperately want love, yet carry a subconscious identity that says, I am not enough. No matter how much love enters their life, they struggle to receive it. They question it. They fear losing it. They push it away, not because they don't want love, but because love conflicts with the identity they secretly hold. The subconscious always seeks consistency. It prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar possibility. Read that again. The subconscious often prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar possibility. Why? Because familiarity feels safe, and safety is one of its primary objectives. This explains why people sometimes sabotage their own happiness, why they leave opportunities unexplored, why they remain in situations that no longer serve them, why they repeat the same mistakes over and over again. The old identity feels safer than the unknown, even when the unknown contains freedom. Imagine spending your entire life inside a small room. One day someone opens a door and reveals an entire world waiting outside. Mountains, oceans, possibilities beyond imagination. Yet instead of leaving, you remain inside, not because the room is better, but because it is familiar. This is exactly what happens psychologically. People remain loyal to old versions of themselves long after those identities stop serving them. The identity becomes a comfort zone, a prison disguised as protection. And here's the most important realization. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not your failures. You are not the opinions others formed about you. You are not the label society placed upon you. You are not the fears you inherited. You are not the limitations you learned. Those things happened. Those things were experienced. Those things were taught. But they are not you. The real you exists beneath every story, beneath every wound, beneath every belief, beneath every limitation. The real you is awareness itself, the observer, the witness, the consciousness capable of choosing again. This realization has appeared throughout history in nearly every spiritual tradition. The sages understood it. The mystics understood it. The awakened souls understood it. They all pointed toward the same truth. Suffering often begins when we mistake the story for the self, when we become attached to an identity that was never meant to define us. Transformation begins the moment you question the story, the moment you stop asking, what has happened to me? And begin asking, who am I choosing to become? Because identity is not fixed. Identity is fluid. Identity can evolve. Identity can expand. Identity can be rewritten. And every extraordinary life begins with a new identity. Before someone becomes wealthy, they begin thinking differently. Before someone becomes confident, they begin seeing themselves differently. Before someone becomes successful, they begin identifying differently. The outer transformation follows the inner transformation. Always. This is why the most powerful question you can ask yourself tonight is not, what do I want to achieve? Instead, ask, who am I becoming every day? Because your future is not created by your goals alone. It is created by the identity that pursues those goals. And if you truly wish to transform your life, you must be willing to release the old version of yourself, the version built from fear, the version built from doubt, the version built from limitation, the version built from survival. You must be willing to step into a new identity. Not someday, not when circumstances improve, not when success arrives. Now, because the moment you begin embodying a new identity internally, your subconscious begins receiving new instructions. New possibilities emerge. New behaviors appear. New opportunities become visible. And gradually, almost mysteriously, life begins reflecting the person you have become. The prison door was never locked. The door has always been open. The only thing keeping you inside was the belief that you belonged there. There is a story playing inside your mind right now, a story so familiar that you may not even realize it exists. It follows you everywhere. It influences your decisions. It shapes your emotions. It determines what you believe is possible. And in many ways, it quietly creates a life you experience. Most people think their lives are shaped by events. But events are only part of the equation. What truly shapes a life is the meaning attached to those events. Two people can live through the exact same experience and create completely different futures. One becomes stronger. The other becomes bitter. One discovers wisdom. The other discovers fear. One finds purpose. The other finds limitation. The difference is not the event. The difference is the story. Imagine two children growing up in difficult circumstances. Both witness struggle. Both experience hardship. Both face uncertainty. One child eventually says, "My past taught me resilience." The other says, "My past ruined my chances." Same circumstances, different stories, different destinies. The subconscious mind does not respond primarily to facts. It responds to interpretation, to meaning, to narrative. This is why the stories you tell yourself matter so much. Every time you remember your past, you are not merely recalling events. You are reinforcing a narrative. You are strengthening a version of reality. You are reminding the subconscious who you believe you are. And eventually, that story becomes an identity. The story becomes a lens, a filter through which you see everything. Perhaps your story sounds like this. Nothing ever works out for me. I always get overlooked. I have to struggle for everything. People can't be trusted. I miss my opportunity. I'm too late. I'm too old. I'm not talented enough. These stories may feel true, but feeling true and being true are not the same thing. A story repeated often enough begins to feel like reality. Yet many of the stories people carry are incomplete. Some are distorted. Some are inherited. Some are created during moments of pain. And some are simply false. The tragedy is not that these stories exist. The tragedy is that most people never question them. They spend years defending narratives that keep them small. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with heavy stones. For years, you carry the weight. Eventually, it feels normal. You forget what life feels like without it. Then one day, someone asks, "Why are you carrying those stones?" And you realize something shocking. You don't actually need them anymore. Many subconscious stories work exactly the same way. They were created to explain an experience, to make sense of a painful event, to protect you. But somewhere along the way, they became prisons. The mind loves certainty, even painful certainty, because uncertainty feels dangerous. This is why people often cling to limiting stories. The familiar suffering feels safer than an unfamiliar possibility. But transformation begins the moment you challenge the narrative, the moment you ask, what if the story is incomplete? What if I've misunderstood my past? What if the event wasn't defining me? What if it was preparing me? History is filled with people who transformed their lives by changing the meaning of their experiences. The event remained the same. The story changed. And because the story changed, the future changed. A failure became a lesson. A rejection became redirection. A loss became wisdom. A setback became preparation. The subconscious immediately began working with a different blueprint, a different interpretation, a different reality. This is one of the greatest powers available to human beings, the ability to consciously rewrite meaning, to become the author instead of the victim, to stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That single shift changes everything. Victims relive the past. Creators transform it. Victims see wounds. Creators find wisdom. Victims see endings. Creators discover beginnings. The subconscious responds to whichever story is repeated most often, which means you have a choice. You can continue rehearsing an old narrative, or you can begin creating a new one. Tonight, I want you to imagine something. Imagine your life as a book. Every chapter represents a season of your journey. Some chapters were beautiful. Some chapters were painful. Some chapters were confusing. But here's the important part. A chapter is not the entire book. A difficult chapter does not determine the ending. A painful chapter does not define the author. And a challenging chapter does not mean the story is over. Yet many people live as though one chapter defines everything. One failure, one heartbreak, one mistake, one disappointment. And they allow that chapter to become their identity. But your story is still being written. The pages ahead are blank. The future has not been decided. And every thought you think today is helping write tomorrow's chapter. This means you are not trapped by your past. You are influenced by it, but not imprisoned by it. You can choose a new meaning, a new interpretation, a new narrative, a new direction. Because the most powerful stories are not the ones we inherit. They are the ones we consciously create. And perhaps the most important story you will ever tell is the story you tell about yourself. Make it a story of resilience. Make it a story of growth. Make it a story of awakening. Make it a story of possibility. Because the subconscious mind is listening. And the story you repeat today may become the reality you live tomorrow. But there is something even more powerful than the stories you tell yourself. Something capable of reshaping the subconscious at an even deeper level. Something used by visionaries, inventors, mystics, and spiritual teachers throughout history. It is not willpower. It is not effort. It is not logic. It is imagination. And once you understand how imagination truly works, you will begin to see why it may be the greatest creative force you possess. There is a force within you that is shaping your future every single day. Most people use it constantly. Few understand it, and even fewer use it consciously. This force has built civilizations, inspired inventions, created masterpieces, transformed ordinary individuals into extraordinary leaders. It has launched businesses, healed lives, sparked revolutions, and changed the course of history. This force is imagination. Yet for most adults, imagination has been misunderstood. Somewhere along the journey of growing up, many people were taught that imagination belongs to children, that it is fantasy, make-believe, wishful thinking, something disconnected from reality. But what if imagination is not the opposite reality? What if imagination is the birthplace of reality? Before every building existed physically, it existed mentally. Before every invention appeared in the world, it appeared in someone's imagination. Before every achievement became visible, it was first experienced internally. Every creation begins twice, first in the mind, then in the world. This is one of the most important principles you can understand. The subconscious mind responds to mental images, not merely words, not merely intentions. Images. Think about your dreams at night. While dreaming, your body often reacts to imagined experiences as if they were real. Your heart races. Your breathing changes. Your emotions intensify, even though nothing physical is happening. Why? Because the subconscious mind responds to experience, whether that experience is physical or vividly imagined. This is why imagination is so powerful. The subconscious accepts emotionally charged mental experiences as instructions. Every time you vividly imagine a future possibility, you are creating a blueprint, a template, a set of instructions, a direction. Most people unknowingly use imagination against themselves. They imagine failure. They imagine rejection. They imagine embarrassment. They imagine loss. They imagine disaster. And because these images are repeated frequently, the subconscious begins treating them as probable realities. Consider how often people rehearse conversations that have not happened. They imagine arguments, conflicts, problems, worst-case scenarios. Hours of mental energy are spent creating experiences they never want to live. The subconscious absorbs all of it. Now imagine redirecting that same power intentionally. Imagine using imagination to rehearse success, peace, confidence, health, abundance, meaningful relationships, purpose. The subconscious cannot easily distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a physically experienced one. Both leave impressions. Both create emotional responses. Both influence future behavior. This is why elite athletes use visualization. Long before stepping onto the field, many have already played the game thousands of times in their minds. They have seen themselves succeeding. They have felt the emotions. They have rehearsed victory internally. By the time reality arrives, the subconscious recognizes the experience. It feels familiar, and familiarity creates confidence. The same principle applies to every area of life. If you repeatedly imagine yourself as capable, the subconscious begins accepting capability as normal. If you repeatedly imagine abundance, the subconscious begins accepting abundance as familiar. If you repeatedly imagine confidence, confidence begins feeling natural. You are literally teaching your subconscious what reality should feel like. This is where many people misunderstand manifestation. Manifestation is not forcing reality. It is becoming internally familiar with the reality you desire. When something feels familiar internally, your actions begin changing automatically. You notice opportunities you previously ignored. You speak differently. You carry yourself differently. You make decisions differently. The world responds differently. Not because magic happened, because you changed. Everything begins with an image. Think about a movie projector. The image on the screen is only a reflection of what exists inside the projector. Most people spend their lives trying to change the screen, but the image can only change when the film changes. Your imagination is that film. The subconscious projects it onto the screen of life. This is why protecting your imagination is so important. Be careful what you repeatedly picture. Be careful what stories you mentally rehearse. Be careful what futures you emotionally invest in. Because every image becomes a seed, and every seed eventually produces a harvest. One of the greatest spiritual truths ever discovered is this: you become what you consistently contemplate. The mind moves toward the images it repeatedly entertains. This is not merely philosophy. It is observable reality. People who constantly imagine limitation begin living limited lives. People who constantly imagine possibility begin discovering possibilities everywhere. The difference is not luck. The difference is focus. The difference is imagination. Now I want you to pause for a moment. Close your eyes if you can. Imagine the highest version of yourself. Not a perfect version, not an unrealistic version, but the version of you that has fully stepped into your potential. Notice how that version walks. Notice how that version speaks. Notice how that version thinks. Notice how that version handles challenges. Notice the confidence, the peace, the certainty, the purpose. That image matters because your subconscious is paying attention. Every time you return to that vision, you strengthen it, you energize it, you make it more familiar. And eventually, what once felt distant begins feeling natural. Then something remarkable happens. The person you imagine starts becoming the person you are. This is the hidden power of imagination. It is not escapism. It is preparation. It is not fantasy. It is creation. It is not pretending. It is programming. And the more consciously you use it, the more powerfully it shapes your life. But there is one moment during the day when imagination becomes even more influential. One brief window when the conscious mind becomes quiet. One sacred period when the subconscious becomes exceptionally receptive. A moment so powerful that many of history's greatest teachers consider it the key to transformation. Most people experience it every single night, yet almost nobody uses it intentionally. The moments just before sleep. And what happens during those moments may change everything. There is a moment every single day when the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind begins to open. Most people pass through this moment without noticing it. They scroll through social media. They watch television. They worry about tomorrow. They replay problems. They drift into sleep carrying stress, fear, and unfinished thoughts. And without realizing it, they deliver those thoughts directly into the subconscious mind. Night after night, year after year, most people unknowingly program themselves while falling asleep. The question is, what are they programming? Because the moments before sleep are unlike any other moments during the day. The analytical mind begins to relax. The logical mind becomes quieter. The barriers between conscious thought and subconscious acceptance become thinner. You enter what psychologists often call a hypnagogic state, a bridge between waking consciousness and sleep, an in-between world, a doorway. This is why so many spiritual teachers throughout history have emphasized the importance of your final thoughts before sleep. Not because they were being poetic, because they understood something profound. The subconscious mind is most receptive when resistance is low, and resistance is lowest when the conscious mind begins letting go. Imagine a farmer planting seeds. Would he throw them onto hard concrete? Or would he place them into soft, fertile soil? The moments before sleep are fertile soil. The subconscious is ready, open, listening, receiving. Whatever you impress upon it during those moments tends to sink deeper than thoughts experienced during the busyness of the day. This explains something many people have experienced. Have you ever gone to sleep thinking about a problem and woken up with a solution? Have you ever struggled with a decision only to find clarity the next morning? Have you ever felt inspired by an idea that seemed to arrive from nowhere after sleep? The subconscious never sleeps. While your body rests, deeper processes continue. Connections are formed. Patterns are analyzed. Solutions emerge. Creative insights surface. The subconscious keeps working. The problem is that most people give it poor material to work with. Before sleep, they focus on fear, stress, arguments, financial worries, unfinished problems. Then they wonder why they wake up feeling heavy, why anxiety follows them, why the same emotional patterns repeat. The subconscious simply continued processing what it was given. Imagine handing a gardener a bag of weed seeds every night, then expecting roses to grow. The gardener isn't the problem. The seeds are. Your subconscious is the gardener. Your thoughts are the seeds. And every night you are planting. The question is, what are you planting? This is where a simple yet powerful practice can transform your life. Before sleeping, create a mental scene that implies your desired future has already happened. Notice something important. Not that it will happen, that it has happened. This distinction matters. The subconscious responds most strongly to present experience, not distant possibility. Imagine the outcome is already real, already complete, already accomplished. Feel it, experience it, live inside it. If your desire is peace, imagine yourself waking up feeling completely at peace. If your desire is abundance, imagine yourself already living in abundance. If your desire is health, imagine yourself already feeling strong and vibrant. Do not focus on how it happened. Do not force the details. Simply experience the end result. Experience the feeling. Because feeling is the language of the subconscious. Emotion is a bridge. Many people make the mistake of visualizing mechanically. They create images, but they feel nothing. The subconscious responds to emotional conviction, not empty repetition. The feeling is what gives life to the image. Think about your most vivid memories. Why do you remember them so clearly? Because emotion strengthened the imprint. Emotion tells the subconscious, this matters. The same principle applies to intentional visualization. The stronger the emotional experience, the deeper the impression. This does not mean forcing excitement. It means generating genuine feelings. Gratitude, relief, joy, peace, confidence. The emotional state you would naturally experience if your desired reality already existed. And then something remarkable begins happening. Night after night, these impressions accumulate, like drops of water filling a container, like seeds taking root beneath the surface. You may not see immediate changes. The process is often invisible at first, just as a seed grows underground before it appears above the soil. But change is occurring. The subconscious is adapting. New neural pathways are forming. New expectations are developing. New possibilities are becoming familiar. Eventually, those inner changes begin expressing themselves externally. Your decisions change. Your reactions change. Your perception changes. Your confidence changes. And life begins responding differently. Not because reality suddenly became generous, but because your inner world shifted. Remember this. The subconscious is always listening, especially when you are falling asleep. Your final thoughts become tomorrow's emotional climate. Your final images become tomorrow's subconscious instructions. Your final feelings become tomorrow's energetic blueprint, which means every night offers a choice. You can enter sleep carrying fear, or you can enter sleep carrying possibility. You can rehearse problems, or you can rehearse solutions. You can reinforce old limitations, or you can plant new realities. One path strengthens the past. The other creates the future. And perhaps the most beautiful part of all is that this practice requires no special talent, no expensive course, no secret knowledge, no extraordinary gift. Only consistency. A few intentional minutes each night. A willingness to imagine. A willingness to feel. A willingness to believe that change is possible. But before you close this journey, there's one final experience I want to share with you, because understanding the subconscious is powerful. Learning how to influence it is powerful, but experiencing it directly, that is where true transformation begins. So in the next few moments, I invite you to let go completely. Let go of the day. Let go of the noise. Let go of the stories. Because we are about to enter a guided inner journey. A journey designed to speak directly to the deepest part of your mind. The part that has been listening all along. The part that has been waiting for new instructions. The part that has always known that a greater version of you is possible. And tonight, that version begins to awaken. And now, as we come to the final part of this journey, I invite you to do something simple. Stop trying. Stop analyzing. Stop searching. For the next few moments, just be here. Allow yourself to settle into this experience. If you are able, close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath in, and gently exhale. Again, a little slower this time. Breathing in and breathing out. Feel the tension leaving your body. Feel your shoulders relaxing. Feel your jaw softening. Feel your hands becoming still. There's nowhere you need to go. Nothing you need to accomplish. Nothing you need to prove. This moment is enough. As your breathing slows, imagine yourself standing at the edge of a beautiful path. A path that stretches beyond the horizon. The air feels calm. The sky is clear. And for the first time in a very long time, you feel completely safe. With every step you take along this path, you leave something behind. Another step, and you release an old fear. Another step, and you release an old disappointment. Another step, and you release an old story about who you thought you were. Keep walking. Notice how much lighter you feel. The weight you have carried for years is beginning to dissolve, not because you are forgetting your past, but because you are no longer allowing to define your future. Ahead of you, you notice a beautiful doorway, a doorway made of light, warm, peaceful, inviting. You instinctively know that beyond this doorway lies the highest version of yourself, the version that has always existed beneath the fear, beneath the doubt, beneath the limitations. Slowly walk toward it, and as you do, feel a sense of anticipation, a sense of possibility, a sense of coming home. When you reach the doorway, pause for a moment, place your hand upon it, and take a deep breath. As the door begins to open, a brilliant light pours through, not a blinding light, a comforting light, a familiar light, a light that seems to recognize you. Step through, and notice what you see. In front of you stands the highest version of yourself, the version that is free, the version that is confident, the version that trusts life, the version that knows their worth, the version that no longer lives from fear. Take a moment to observe this version of you. Notice the way they stand. Notice the peace in their eyes. Notice the certainty in their presence. Notice the calm strength they carry. This version of you is not pretending, not hoping, not wishing. This version knows that abundance is possible, knows that love is possible, knows that healing is possible, knows that transformation is possible. And now imagine this future version of yourself smiling, as if they have been waiting for you, as if they have always believed in you, as if they have never doubted your ability to become who you were meant to be. Slowly, they begin walking toward you, closer and closer, and as they do, you realize something extraordinary. They are not separate from you. They are you, a future possibility, a higher expression, a greater embodiment of everything that already exists within you. As they reach you, they place a hand on your shoulder, and they say, "You are stronger than you think. You are more capable than you know. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not your fears. You are not your limitations. You are far more powerful than you have ever allowed yourself to believe." Allow those words to sink in. Feel them. Receive them. Let them move beyond the conscious mind, into the deeper layers of your being. Now imagine something beautiful happening. The future version of you begins merging with you. The separation disappears. Their confidence becomes your confidence. Their peace becomes your peace. Their wisdom becomes your wisdom. Their strength becomes your strength. The two of you become one. And as this happens, feel a wave of energy moving through your entire body. A feeling of expansion, a feeling of alignment, a feeling of remembering who you truly are. Because the truth is, you were never broken. You were never lacking. You were never incomplete. You simply forgot. You forgot your power. You forgot your potential. You forgot your connection to something greater. But now you remember. And remembering changes everything. Take another deep breath. Feel gratitude filling your heart. Gratitude for your journey. Gratitude for your growth. Gratitude for every challenge that strengthened you. Gratitude for every lesson that shaped you. Gratitude for every moment that brought you here. Now imagine your future unfolding before you. Not every detail, just the feeling. The feeling of living as your highest self. The feeling of waking up with purpose. The feeling of moving through life with confidence. The feeling of trusting yourself. The feeling of knowing that life is supporting you. Feel that reality now, not someday, not in the future. Now, because every transformation begins with a state of being, and that state is available to you in this moment. Allow yourself to rest there for a few seconds, simply breathing, simply feeling, simply becoming. And now, before we finish, I want you to remember one final truth. Your subconscious mind is always listening. Every thought is a seed. Every emotion is water. Every belief is nourishment. And every day, you are planting a garden. Plant wisely. Plant consciously. Plant with intention. Because the life you experience tomorrow is being cultivated by the thoughts you entertain today. Trust the process. Trust your growth. Trust the unseen changes taking place within you. Even when you cannot see the results yet, the seed does not doubt the tree it will become. The sunrise does not question whether morning will arrive. And your transformation does not need your fear to happen. It only needs your participation. So tonight, release the need to force. Release the need to control. Release the need to know every step. And instead, choose faith. Choose possibility. Choose expansion. Choose the highest vision you have for your life. And hold it gently, because the person you are becoming is already on their way. In many ways, they are already here. Take one final deep breath. Slowly inhale. Slowly exhale. And carry this feeling with you into the rest of your day, you all along, or into the peaceful sleep that awaits you. Remember, your mind is powerful. Your imagination is powerful. Your story is powerful. But most powerful of all is the awareness that you can choose again, at any moment, in any circumstance. No matter what happened yesterday, no matter what happened years ago, you can choose a new thought, a new belief, a new direction, a new future. And that choice may change everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing this journey. And until we meet again, take care of your mind, protect your energy, trust your inner wisdom, and never forget the power you seek has been within.